Salvete. In this lesson, we'll be learning how to translate the verb forms that we learned in the previous lesson. You'll need your notes from the previous lesson. For that, let's make a neighboring chart just to the right of this one. We're going to draw a little equal sign in between so that we know that one spot on the left is the same as the one spot on the right. So when we see the word laudo, we know that it is first person singular because it ends with O. And therefore, if it's first person singular, we know that it has as its English subject the pronoun I from the English pronoun subject chart. Then we just have to attach the present meaning of this verb laudo, praise, after the subject. Laudas, since it has that os ending, is second person singular, and therefore the English subject would be the subject from the same position in our subject chart, you. Then we add the meaning to get you praise. For the third person singular, we could pick the subject he or she or it, whichever one you like. Then add the English verb. Notice that in standard English, we wouldn't say she prays, but rather she praises. See if you can assemble the English translations of laudamus, laudatus, and laudant in the plural column on your own. If you did it correctly, you should have gotten the phrases we praise, you praise, and they praise. Notice that we haven't learned any Latin pronouns. We haven't learned how to say I or you or he or she or it in Latin. That's because in Latin, our English subject pronouns are going to disappear. Latin didn't use them. So if we take the example in English, we sail, and we try to translate that into Latin, then we're going to have to use the stem of the verb navigo, which means sail. So we're going to drop the O and just end up with the stem nawig. And then we're going to have to say, all right, we is first person plural from our English pronoun subject chart. And then we are going to have to add our Latin first person plural ending, amus, to properly translate we sail into Latin. Notice that pronoun subject disappears. Likewise, if we're translating from Latin into English, we're going to have to supply a subject. So when we see that ant, aunt ending, that means that the verb is third person plural. We look up our third person plural pronoun on our English subject chart, and we find out that the subject should be they. Then we find the vocab entry which begins with VOC, woke, and we find out that woko means I call, so we can add that meaning after they, so we end up with they call. The Latin present tense will be able to be translated into English 3 different ways. We'll use the verb wokant as an example. We already said that this could be translated as they call. This translation is called the simple present. However, it could also be translated as they are calling. This translation we'll call the progressive present. The third way that we could translate wokant is they do call. This translation is called the emphatic present. We'll be able to translate this one form, wokant, into English 3 different ways because Latin only had one tense which covered those 3 different English forms. So if we had, for example, the English phrase, he is giving, the first thing that we'll do is we'll just cross out that helping verb is, because that helping verb is just going to get rolled into the rest of the verb because it's part of the progressive present. Then we'll start with the stem of the verb give, which is just a D once we drop the O from do, and then we'll add our third person singular he ending from our chart above, ought. So the English phrase, he is giving, would translate into Latin as simply dot. One last thing to go over is what we do with a verb if the subject is a noun. The answer is that if the subject is any noun rather than a pronoun, then the verb is going to have to be third person. So whether the subject is girl, boy, woman, man, pens, pencils, Sasquatch, coffee, students, snowmen, volunteers, Katniss Everdeen, the verb which follows this will always be a third-person verb. So if we have the phrase, the girls do fight, the first thing that we'll do is we'll ignore the words the as an article and do as a helping verb, and then we'll translate that girls subject as puellae with an AE because it's plural, and then fight would be pugnant with an ANT ending because those girls as a noun would make a third person verb and they're plural, so the verb is also going to be plural. We'll practice this more when we see each other in class next. Well, later.